Get ready to laugh the night away when comedian Russell Peters heads to the Treasure Island Event Center November 29th. Don't miss this hilarious and unapologetic comic. November 29th out in Event Center. Tickets on sale now. TICasino.com.
Final hour, 9 to noon. Nordo in for PA. PA's back tomorrow. Again, Minnesota Wild opened the season hosting the Columbus Blue Jackets. New head coach of the Blue Jackets, by the way, former Wild coach Dean Evison. But that'll be at the X at 7 o'clock. We'll be doing a Vox in the Box show from Tria and pumped to do that. Joining me in studio, whether it's the weekly border battle, it's in the zone, it's Packer preview. What is it? A quarter century plus, nearly 30 years.
Yeah,
you've been on the
30.
fan. How about that? Dave Sinykin at TC Head Cheese.
This says I'm old, is what it says.
Via X. That means tenured.
That's a better word. Yeah, it's better.
Is there a time served element to it?
Seasoned is good too.
Yeah, seasoned. We're putting a bow on it there.
We really
I guess,
are.
a little bit, but
lipstick on a pig and all that fun stuff. How are you doing, Nordo?
I'm doing well. And you know what's funny is you roll in here and guillotine leagues, fantasy football, Charchi in the mix, the whole thing, and you're telling me this story about how you were really sweating it in the Monday night game.
Can't sweat more than I sweat Monday night.
Chiefs and Saints.
Nobody was watching that game at the end except for guys like me that were sweating out the guillotine grind, hoping not to get chopped in PA's league.
And normally I'm on your side of it. Normally I'm the guy that gets
choppy.
I'm the guy that's sweating it. I'm getting clipped at the wire. And I'm just, everyone's got that decimal point story, right? A yard here, a yard there. You're praying for some sort of statistical,
anomaly of
correction.
Yeah,
the next day. And it just never happens. But you were talking about the Chiefs and the Saints and how you had two people behind you.
Yeah, I was done. Two guys behind me. And
you said one guy has Jamal Williams and Juju Smith-Schuster.
Right, so I think he's dead.
Correct.
I mean, those guys are non-entities.
That was me.
That was you?
That was me.
I didn't even know that was you. What's your name in that league?
I went to work at, I think is it Murderers Row, maybe?
Maybe so. I thought you were dead with those two guys.
Murderers Row that included
that's so funny.
Jamal Williams and Juju Smith-Schuster. No, I mean, again.
That's a pathetic roster to even roll out with those two guys. But I understand how it's bye weeks and it's guillotine league. The leagues are deep. But is somebody starting Jamal Williams and Juju?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Is really what it is.
And Juju has the game of his life.
And if anybody wants me in their fantasy football league, the what I do is I look at the week 5 list of people on IR.
Yeah.
And then I time travel back. That's my draft board. And so if it's Puka Nacua, if it's Nico Collins, if it's AJ Brown, if it's Christian McCaffrey, those are the guys that I love picking. It's a complete disaster.
Oh, I see. You figure they're going to be off and ready to jump right in there.
You didn't see Juju coming, did you?
I did not see Juju coming. You skated past me. The other guy, I figured, well, he's got Chris Olave. He needs like 5 points, so he's gonna fly by me. But it came down to he just needed one more catch in the final 2 drives, and I was chopped. And the last play was thrown to him, went through his hands. I mean, seriously, I shouldn't care this much.
Did you jump out of a chair?
My wife wondered what was wrong with me because she was on her phone and not even paying attention. And I was texting my son Jackson. It's what makes Guillotine League so fun because in a stupid game where nobody else cares, I'm just saying anybody but number 12. Just throw it. And they have their backup quarterback in. He wants to make Olave happy because he hasn't gotten a look all night. How about all of us bottom feeders? Because I think Superstats Dave had
Rashid Shaheed in it, and he's going to get 2 targets a game, but one of them's going to be a 70-yarder for a touchdown. Right. And if he closes on it, that's the end of my season. So I mean, it's
fun. Yeah, I had 3 starters out with bye, so it was going to be
Juju coming.
It was going to be a rough week for me, no matter what.
Not a rough week here. So on Thursdays, I was joking about it a bit yesterday, but I feel we need to be open about this. I doubted your team last week in LA. So we do this 6-pack of picks bit on Thursdays, and we're just awful at it. It's not going well in 2024 at all. Worse than my guillotine situation. And I'm, based on what I saw, it's the second half, something to build off of a positivity for your squad at Lambeau. And that 5-play, 90-some-yard drive that Jordan Love had.
The big play to Jaden Reed.
The big play to Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
And specifically in And speaking of Jaden Reed, what a catch right out of the gates. Because Jordan Love, for me, I'm really having trouble figuring him out at this point in the season. He just comes back from injury last week, so he hasn't played every game. I get it.
Yep.
But completion percentage, kind of an issue, and it's a wonky.
That.
Yep, there you go. It's a wonky game in Brazil. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to factor in all of these things. But there are still just moments where that kid has just, 1 in a million freaking arm talent. With that initial throw in L.A. to Reed there, and the safety tried to swipe it, and Reed has to make a great catch. He does.
Yep.
But it was just beautiful from Jordan Love. So I'm having trouble. Like, where's your head at on Jordan Love now that he's back? He's played a couple of games. How's the knee looking? Where are you at as a Packers fan with Jordan Love?
Yeah, he was, I think, a lot healthier looking than he was against the Vikes. And I think the one play that really showed it last week was he had a 12-yard scramble.
Okay.
Where he really kind of got on his jets and beat the linebacker around the corner to get a first down. I thought, well, wow, the fact that he's even going to try that, not to say, he looked pretty much normal on that play. So he's obviously healthier than he was certainly in the first half of that Viking game. So that's a really good sign. But what he's not yet doing is they're not running the offense as if he were 100%. And what I mean by that is he's barely playing under center at all right now. It's pistol, it's shotgun to just prevent him from having to move more than he has to. And this offense is a lot more lethal, as most are, when you can at least put play action into play when the guy's under center and now he's turning and you don't know. And I think Josh Jacobs is a better back when a quarterback's under center. Just get that head of steam going, and not just get the ball handed to you and go. So the offense is going to be a lot better in 5 or 6 weeks, I think, when everybody's feeling more comfortable. And we've seen signs, but man, there were I think every drive last week, except for that 96-yard drive and the very last drive before halftime, was a 3-and-out. They had 4 or 5 3-and-outs in the first half. So they're still not quite in sync. And yeah, no Dobbs, no Watson, Musgrave's not. There are issues health-wise, but just like the defense, which is still a work in progress with Hafley, they're all learning the system. We see takeaways coming, and we see bits of these young kids playing, but they're going to be better in the back half too. And they got kind of a soft part of the schedule coming up. So I think they're kind of fortunate that they can still kind of ramp up. Week 9 is Detroit, the next division game, then the bye, and then it starts to get tricky. So I think they're still trying to figure things out.
What is up with Dobbs, by the way? Because I saw something pop. I admittedly did not dig deeply into it. Yeah. But is there a little bit of what about me situation because into the season, by all accounts, the head coach said it himself, we basically got 4 number ones. Yeah. And the way that Jordan Love, the way they run that offense, it is effectively accurate. It could be Wicks, it could be Reed. Reed's your best guy.
He is maybe the best slot receiver in football this year. That's not just hyperbole. He's the first guy since 1965 in the NFL to have 400 yards receiving and 100 yards rushing in the first 5 weeks of the season. That's not been done in 60 years.
He had that nice rushing TD opening night, didn't he?
Yeah,
that was him?
Yeah, he's very fast. He has elevated, I think, to that, if you want to give somebody that title. But, yeah, the Dobbs thing came out of nowhere because he went to practice Wednesday, and then he was out Thursday and out Friday, and nobody knew where he was. They had to send someone to his house to make sure he was alive.
For real?
He never called in and said, hey, I'm not coming. He just didn't show up. So you scratch your head and you go, what? Apparently he wasn't happy with his role. That's what was reported by SI's Bill Huber. And, maybe you look at the previous game, against the Vikes where Wicks got 13 targets. After Watson went out, Wicks became the guy. That might have rubbed him the wrong way. Then he goes to practice Wednesday, and they install the 2-minute and all the red zone stuff. And maybe, again, he didn't see 87 as being a big – and it might have just hurt his feelings.
Okay.
Not the right way to handle it, just to not show up. So they suspended him. He goes in Monday, meets with LaFleur, and LaFleur said, all right, we worked it all out. He's good. He'll be back at practice today. We'll assume he'll be there today. It's not a good look. No. It's not at all from how Dobbs has been put forth as the kind of guy he is, that he's not a me guy. He never has been, but you never know, right?
Yeah.
So the one thing
Wicks had a game against the Purple, though.
He did, but he's dropping balls, man. He dropped a couple against you guys. Yeah. He dropped 2 more, a big one Sunday that pretty much would have put the game on ice. I don't even know if the Rams would have gotten the ball back at the end. So he's kind of working through what Devontae Adams worked through in his second year. Everybody was high on him for fantasy, and he's dropping balls, and everyone's just ripping him, and what a mess and bust. And then year 3, he explodes. So the Packers hope it doesn't take Wicks till year 3, but he's He's working through some drops. I think the Packers lead the league in 11% drop rate. So you look at Love's completion percentage and you go, well, that's not so good. Well, he's not getting a lot of help so far.
Okay.
Either. And we saw he was inaccurate the first half against the Vikes. He was not comfortable planting and all that. That'll all elevate. The question mark for Green Bay's offense is going to be certainly, is everybody okay with the targets? Because right now, Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft are the 1-2 options. Kraft is starting to make us Packer fans look like that's got some George Kittle in him.
Oh, really?
He was mic'd up last week, and you know how you saw Kittle in that receiver show and how funny he is that's kind of what Kraft's personality is. But he's a full all-pro type potential tight end because he can block. He's very willing to get down and dirty and block. And he's a yak guy. He gets the ball, and guys can't tackle him. And he's starting to really, certainly separate from Musgrave, but he's getting the notice around the league that this could be a special tight end. And for a guy in Goody who hasn't hit on a third-round pick ever, I think the third-round curse might finally be lifted with this kid.
Tucker Kraft's been, he's an absolute stud, 3 TDs his last 2 games. I saw some statistic where it was basically he's the only guy other than Rob Gronkowski that's had kind of these little short-term windows of elite greatness at the tight end spot, like Kraft has the last 2. And one of them includes my team, and I don't really like that.
Understood.
The love for LaFleur, right? I mean, what LaFleur's been able to navigate through, we talked about it when we were doing the border battle. Love's going to be out. We don't know how long it is.
Yeah.
But LaFleur's got to adjust. And Malik Willis just got off the plane. And that's going to but thankfully at that time you get a Colts game in the mix.
Yep.
You get
Titans.
the Titans, right?
Yep.
And it's like if you can just I remember kind of talking with you, we're mentally machinated, like if you can get one of those, you end up getting them both, right? And just the impressive nature of weaving in now a different kind of runner in Josh Jacobs. We're really making this thing fly. It's been impressive as a guy that doesn't like your team, doesn't like your organization, loves the stadium, loves the neighborhood, all that. But I have to tip my cap to LaFleur. It's been impressive how he's worked through these first 5 weeks.
I think both of our fan bases are really lucky that they've got really brilliant offensive coaches right now, and their head coaches obviously too, and going about it different ways. And O'Connell at some point will have a young quarterback to mold, we think, unless Turtle.
We'll see.
We'll see how the season goes. But yeah, I think what LaFleur did, certainly handling Rodgers when he first got here, it's like, well, how's this guy going to deal with Aaron Rodgers? Nobody knew if Rodgers would buy in, and Rodgers gets a couple of MVPs. And then here comes Jordan Love, and as the offense grew last year, you saw what LaFleur's offense really is like when you don't have Rodgers there changing everything. To do what he wanted to do was throw to 17 every time. So then the challenge of...
He's available, by the way.
He is available. I don't think we're going to look that way, but he'll find something.
Devontae for Dobbs?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We don't have the kind of money to spend on a receiver. Right. We got to pay a bunch of guys soon. But yeah, those 2 games with Malik Willis was just really just fun and I'm sure kind of fun for him and the offensive coaches. Like, how do we on the fly change everything about who we are, and can this kid even handle it?
Yeah.
So you credit LaFleur as you should, but Willis deserves a ton of credit too, because people were ready to throw him away. He gets another chance, and man, granted the first game against Indy, was it Indy or Tennessee now? I forget. I think Indy was
the first one.
They ran the ball 1,000 times. They ran for 250 yards in the first half. I mean, it was working. He didn't have to throw. But the next week, they changed. He was throwing the ball downfield and connecting, and it was just as a fan, it's just fun. Wow, he made that work somehow.
Well, he gets to beat his former team. Jair, I think, had the pick 6 in that game, right? Because Levis has been nothing short of apocalyptically bad, it seems.
Correct.
For the Titans. So they moved on from Malik, and it's gotten worse for them. Speaking of Jair, that's one aspect of your team. I want to know where your head's at. Like, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark's name hasn't necessarily splashed to me. Your guy, Quay Walker, is a demon right now. Like, it seems like he's maturing in the way that they're using him. He's everywhere all the time. But missing Jair the last couple of games, it looks like he can get around the gym on your guys through the air a little bit. How big is that? And, getting him healthy.
It would be great to have him back. Obviously, with Marvin Harrison looming this week, I'd like to see 23 on the field. The big negative for the Packers defense has been Rashawn Gary, who's just a rumor right now. He has 1 sack in his last 12 games. He was coming off the ACL last year, so all right, we get that. But the only sack he's gotten this year was against Lane Johnson, who didn't react to the snap. Like he never got out of his stance.
Oh, it's the first time he didn't leave early in his career.
Correct. And he paid for it because he got Jalen Hurts sacked. But yeah, so the Gary ineffectiveness is a real head scratcher, and Green Bay has to figure that out because we didn't get pressure on Darnold unless, in the second half when they started to throw extra guys out there and blitzing a little bit. So that's a concern. But the biggest difference for this defense from a year ago are the 3 new safeties, oddly enough. I mean, we know what Xavier McKinney's done.
Well, it's ridiculous.
Interception, 6 turnovers in 5 games.
One of them didn't count, by the way, but that's...
Well, understood. I don't know how you look at that and say, yeah, that's an interception. But either way, he has changed everything. And they drafted 2 safeties, Javon Bullard from Georgia in the 2nd round, Evan Williams from Oregon in the 4th round. And Williams got his first full game because of Jair being out. They moved Keyshawn Nixon from the slot to the outside. They moved Bullard into the nickel, and they let Williams play. And those cats, man, they pop off tape, those 2 safeties. And Williams made the play at the end of the game on 4th down to end the game. That was a black hole for us last year. The safety position play was terrible last year.
Was it Amos or Eddie Jackson?
No, it wasn't. Amos was 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
it was
right.
Darnell Savage, and Anthony Johnson, and just a bunch of
Owens.
Yeah, Jonathan Owens, Simone Biles' husband, and
Savage gave you a few good moments over his time there, but it's still one of my favorites.
Pick 6 against the Cowboys.
When Dalvin Cook got loose for 75 at Lambeau, and I think this is it's the Kevin King game. I shouldn't have brought this up because now I'm annoyed.
That's a
Kirk
dangerous
back
name
into the end zone. Yeah, Kevin
King.
King did nothing in his career except against the purple and gold. It's crazy. But Savage on skates.
That's the guy we drafted instead of T.J. Watt, by the way, who Wisconsin fans were all clamoring for. And we figured there was a need there, so why don't we just grab T.J. Watt?
See, once in a while, we find some parallels we can both lament on, right?
Every fan base has guys like that. We had the ultimate one, though. I think we had the all-time worst one. The Tony. This is well before your time, but the Tony Mandarich pick in '89, where they picked 2nd, and that was the draft that Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders. We took
and you guys picked 2nd, so you had all of those names available.
Correct. We could have taken any of those guys but Aikman, and Mandarich was the cover boy of SI heading into the draft. Yep. This monster of a lineman from Michigan State. Turns out he was on steroids completely. He had no muscle tone in his body, and he flamed out instantly. It was just so that's the all-time worst because there was Derek Thomas, the linebacker.
I don't have the sad music.
It's like 4 Hall of Famers in the top 5, and we picked the wrong guy. So yeah, every fan base has those draft picks that they regret for sure.
You guys have a nice little stretch coming up for you here with Zona and Houston at home. Now Houston ultimately, I think they're 4-1 now.
No Nico.
And this running back situation, I mix in, let's say he plays this weekend and whatnot, but their inability to run the ball has caused them issues.
They've been ugly all season.
They have been.
I mean, you guys destroyed them, but even their first 2 games were wins, but they let the Colts play with them.
Yeah. The Bears hung in it, made it a one-score game.
And last week, if Buffalo doesn't vomit and just decide to give them the ball back for no reason, they might have lost that game because once Nico went out, they were an entirely different team.
But Brett was bringing it up early, and I guess I didn't think about it this way, and I should have. And several texters kind of brought this up as he was talking about strength of schedule moving forward now based on power rankings. He had some sort of a beautiful mind-like formula he was trying to articulate on the air, and
high level, long time.
I just didn't understand it. No, but in the end, he was talking like our division is the only division in the NFL that is above 500. And we've had border battle 128, the first of 2
that's
already.
The only division game so far that's been played.
But all of us have a bunch of division games coming up. This is an absolute meat grinder.
It's going to be so fun.
And your team's going to get better. Our team has the right out of the bye to get better. We also, I would actually say our schedule, we have some soft spots to take advantage of.
It was the beginning. We thought, this could be a 1-6, 2-5 start for the Purple if we're not careful. Yeah, you got things. I mean, they look like they ease up. You never know if the
correct,
right? Everything changes.
Well, I'm going to say that the Colts are. The way I viewed the Colts 6 weeks ago, I still view them that way. Then the Titans, then the Jaguars. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we get the AFC South, a pretty fun division to play.
I thought Doug Peterson was going to be the first. Saleh bouncing out of nowhere.
Yep.
But I thought Doug Peterson's in some trouble with the way they ended last year, and now what we've seen thus far. Speaking of, but this is going to be a meat grinder in the NFC North, and I did prior to you coming in. We were talking about news, so I'm taking just a hard right turn to the London game and Saleh being fired yesterday, and Ken, we're trying to read through tea leaves, right? talking with PA earlier as well. Like, Aaron looked as disinterested and as negative as I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers for about 3/4 of that game that the Vikings played the Jets on Sunday.
Yeah.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers had anything to do with Woody Johnson pulling the plug on Mr. Saleh?
Well,
because I think it's preposterous that they're making this move at this stage. If he truly thinks that this is one of the better teams he's had in years,
how is the offense getting better by firing Robert Saleh? That's the defense is not the problem over there. It's the
Correct.
offense and the antiquated system that Nathaniel Hackett, Rodgers' best friend, is running. And of course, he had something to do with it. There was, reports that Saleh was going to strip Hackett of his play calling duties and have somebody else call the plays. And then suddenly that night, after he tells the coaches or team or whatever, that night the owner has a phone call conversation with Aaron Rodgers. Woody Johnson says, Saleh never came up in our phone discussion. Okay, yeah, we're all going to believe that. Rodgers said, did I hear that you're pulling the play calling duties from Nate? Man, that's no good. Nate's not the problem. Yeah, this guy on top, man. That's what happened. There's no reason to fire Robert Saleh 5 games in to this experiment where Rodgers is coming off an Achilles. He's 40. It might be a couple weeks before things get going. The way the offense is operating is the problem. And yes, Rodgers is immobile right now. The arm is there, but everything else is not.
he looks super feeble and vulnerable back there.
He did last week for sure, and I think the Vikings had something to do with it. I think that defense gets in your head a little bit. But, his arm, we a couple weeks ago, he had a 300-yard day and looked great. So, yeah, he absolutely got Robert Saleh fired. And that place now, that Jets team is done as far as I don't see them rebounding.
100%, I agree with you, yeah.
They took out, I don't think Robert Saleh is a great head coach, maybe, but he wasn't the problem at all. And so, yeah, I heard you say, is Rodgers a coach killer? At this point in his life, yeah. I'd like to
Does he have McCarthy on his... Is that a notch on the belt as well?
Yeah, I think at some point, it had been 12, 13 years. That's a long time for a coach to stay in one place. So there were a lot of issues there, but they were tired of each other, I think for sure. And so
McCarthy was getting those sneaky massages upstairs or something like that at the team facility. I don't mean sneaky like the bad massages.
No,
but
of course not. No happy endings or anything like that.
Correct. But I just mean people are trying to find them. They're trying to maybe talk about plays and schemes and all of that.
I think he had checked out.
And he's upstairs getting karate chopped.
And then you lose at home to Arizona by like $1 million, and your life ends at that point.
We were pumping up Matt LaFleur's tires about game planning with Malik. Maybe his biggest accomplishment is surviving the last years of Aaron Rodgers and not getting thrown under the bus, because it seems like that's a dangerous spot to be.
And he's always handled that well, hasn't he? LaFleur, I've never heard him publicly.
Yeah, no, he's pretty polished in that way.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. You see those TikTok videos of like the coach after the game in the locker room, giving the game balls out. O'Connell's so much cooler doing those than LaFleur. LaFleur still doesn't seem like he belongs. Do you agree or no?
No, I'm just doing the bit.
Oh.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. O'Connell just sounds more like a head coach in that situation than LaFleur does. And not that means anything, but I always kind of cringe when I watch LaFleur giving props to all the guys and the game balls out. It just seems like it's not natural for KOC. It just kind of rolls off his tongue. So just something I've noticed.
That's Dave Sinykin. If you would be so kind as to stay one more segment, I'd like to talk about the basketball
team. Yeah, let's do it for sure.
That's Dave Sinykin, the head cheese, not just Packer preview, not just, of course, the resident green and gold expert and Packer-loving fan, but he's also a host of In the Zone, long time with Trent Tucker. He loves the Minnesota Timberwolves, loves his Bucks too, but he loves the Wolves, and we all love what we're seeing from them in camp as regular season approaches less than 2 weeks from now. We'll talk about the hoops with Dave Sinykin. It's Nordo in for PA on the Fan.
The cash thing, the Fan and 2 Men in a Truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand at the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. Enter the keyword money. The keyword is money, KFAN.com. Keyword money, Morris Sinning Night. It's a wild Wednesday on the Fan, and we want to send you to the game. Caller 11, let's keep it simple. Caller 11 right now win a pair of tickets to Saturday's game against the Kraken. Call 1-800-320-5326 for your chance. Caller 11 goes to see the Wild take on the Kraken.
segments to go. Right on my TV screen right now, we were talking about him, and there he is. Aaron Rodgers chatting with Pat McAfee. Did you enjoy A.J. Hawk's tenure with the Green and Gold?
Define enjoy.
Well, yeah, just in general.
You know, Hawk's one of those guys, if he had been a third rounder, he would have been just fine. But it was like the one time Green Bay had a top 10 pick in like a million years. And we got a solid, middling linebacker. He had his moments. But
I mean, that duo of Clay and AJ, if he kind of progressed to the ceiling upon which you guys would have put on him expectation-wise.
Just wasn't quick enough, I don't think. He was fine.
Weird that you would say that given how boisterous and vocal he is. I don't understand.
Mr. Personality, right? Yeah.
And he's never in person, I don't think. It's always just him staring at the TV.
Yeah. I don't really get it.
I mean, great chiseled jaw, terrific hair.
Always had a great jaw.
Guys like us we can't rip the hair.
No, he's fine, and I'm sure for those that are interested, he's fine to look at. But
I just think sometimes McAfee has to include him just to make sure he's still breathing, or if the video feed has frozen. I just don't know what his purpose is on the show.
Yeah.
So he contributes he contributed a little bit more to his Packers career than he does to the television now.
Yeah, I'd say I'm short shrifting him a little bit. He lasted a long time. He just was never great. He had moments. Again, I think he was a victim of being drafted so high that expectations are a little higher for what he actually became, but he was fine. He was solid.
All right. To the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Tuesday, October 22nd, I believe they open up against the Los Angeles Lakers. PA and I did a show, Mayo Health Clinic Square, and we're sitting there. The trade's not official, so we can't talk to the head coach about him. It's DiVincenzo, who I've liked really since he was with your Bucks in the early stages, post Villanova. And then, admittedly, Julius Randle is a guy that, if we're talking about fantasy basketball, I can tell you where he's sat and some of the things that he's done. But ultimately, I kind of lost interest in him as he was on the verge of flaming out with the Lakers. But that resurgence in New Orleans with Finchie and then the time that he's put in when healthy with the Knicks, kind of the vibe of this team probably traded away the best overall individual player, but maybe they got better and deeper. 10,000-foot view. How pumped are you for this thing to lift off?
I'll just say this. Last Friday night, I was on my couch ready to watch the Wolves game an hour before it started. I couldn't wait to watch the first game, even knowing that Ant and Randall weren't going to play. I am really excited. Look, we love Cat for everything he did off the court for this community. On the court, we know the ups, the downs. They had a very good year last year and was really good the first two rounds of the playoffs. And then we're sort of remembering the Dallas series, and that sort of reminds us what the Cat experience is you get hyped up, but then in really key moments, you just throw your hands up in the air like he does when he doesn't get a call, or the offensive foul calls or the turnovers. It's just, at some point you go, all right, we know that eventually they're going to have to break this thing up and build around Ant, and Cat's likely going to be the guy. So what are you going to get back for him? And even over the last year, as Trent and I would talk about the Knicks, who always seemed like the most logical place for him, that Julius Randle would have to come back. And that always, you're like, well, Randle's just kind of a black hole. Like, he's a really good offensive player, a 3-time All-Star, a 2-time All-NBA guy, but he gets the ball, he dribbles. It's just, can he win?
Yeah, he's a taller James Harden sometimes.
Yeah,
just
sort of a
beats
poor
the air out of that ball.
Exactly. What really turned me was hearing how much Finch likes him and how much he likes Finch, and almost credits Finch for sort of unlocking parts of his game in New Orleans that made him the player he is today. Makes me think that obviously the Wolves put a lot of thought into how would Randle fit with the guys we have here. We don't know if he's long-term or short-term. He's got a player option next year. We don't have to think about that just yet, even though fans like to do that. As we look at the whole idea here is, how do you stay competitive through Ant's prime? Speaking of Ant, that new show dropped on Netflix today, Starting Five, with Ant being one of the 5 guys. I mean, I'm heading home to start watching. I can't wait to see him featured in that thing.
I love how they mix in Sabonis, by the way. Like, I remember, if you remember NFL, the quarterback series, and they had Kirk, and they had Mahomes, then there was Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, right. You see the Sabonis to Mariota of Starting Five?
Correct. Yes, there's no slight to Mariota, and Sabonis is one of my favorite players in the league. That's not going to be very interesting.
Can't imagine, right? Unless there's something about him we don't know, or he's got a personality that we're not aware of.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be an Arvydas potential cameo. But outside of that, like the Sabonis was just, well, he was just that. He was the bonus on the end of the star-laden, Tatum will be in the mix, and Ant from our perspective will be the most interesting.
You figure the last few episodes will all be Tatum and Ant because they'll be the only two guys still playing. LeBron got knocked out early. Butler was hurt. So it'll be the Ant and Tatum show the last few episodes. But back to Randall.
Yeah.
And this team. Yeah, look, there's a reason the Wolves title odds got better after the trade, right? From 11-1 to 10-1. You look at the makeup of this team, it's so deep now. I mean, you go 10 deep, and you haven't even mentioned TJ Shannon, Josh Minot, who looked amazing in the opener, Luka Garza, who looks like he's going to get some run as a backup center, maybe Leonard Miller. Those are guys 11 to 14. You know, in the past, those are guys like 8 through 11 for this team. So it is so deep. And I think DiVincenzo is the key, and he unlocks so much of what I think this team can be. What I mean is, you got a 19-year-old in Rob Dillingham that we're all excited about. I mean, that dude is electric. And now...
Crazy twitchy, crazy fast.
He doesn't need to be Conley's backup right away. I mean, those nights where Conley doesn't play, and they talked about how they're going to reduce the games Conley plays this year, those will be the Dillingham opportunities when Conley's out. But when Conley and DiVincenzo and Na are both healthy, I'm not sure Dillingham gets a lot of run.
Right.
I think that's healthy for this team to count on a 19-year-old who weighs $160 to give you heavy minutes throughout the year might be a lot to ask. We can sort of ease him in now that DiVincenzo's here. You mentioned it. I mean, when the Bucks traded him for like Serge Ibaka and 2 number 2s, and I know there might have been some salary, but it's just you just won a championship, and this kid was really good off the bench. That really bugged me, and I followed him to Golden State and to New York, and I'm like, why does he keep bouncing around? He's so good. And we saw with the Knicks, once Randall went down, he's their second leading scorer, and like the best 3-point shooter in the league. So he gives you...
Did you know, obviously you probably knew this, but it was a jaw-dropping moment for me when Finch, it wasn't Finch, who was it? Krasinski maybe. But he's like, he hit 283 triples last year. He hit. He did not take. Yeah. He hit. That's incredible to add that to our mix.
Yeah, and he's shooting at an over 40% clip. He's not just firing up a million of them. So he gives this team a guy that can score off the ball, moves so well without the ball, and is really good defensively. And, as Connolly was quick to point out, he's the only guy in the locker room that's won a title.
Right.
And so that sounds kind of cliche, but that voice is going to be important come May and June next year to settle guys down. And
let me ask you this about DiVincenzo, though, because a big part of what we saw with him with the Knicks last year were all the injuries. Felt like the Knicks, everybody was hurt at one point, it felt like, and they still grinded their way to the 7-gamer with Indiana. Is there an element where DiVincenzo, how does Finch use all these guys? We love the depth, but is a DiVincenzo potentially lost? I'm not even saying, forget about, I want to play more. This is a Romeo Dobbs situation here. I just mean in terms of reps and rhythm and the rotation of everything is you can put him out on the wing. You can put DiVincenzo. Maybe he'll play. He can handle the ball. He could back up, potentially get minutes at the Conley spot.
He's not a perfect point guard. No. But yes, he can play those minutes.
But so kind of the idea is it a situation where Finch and of course he's gone over this. It will be a delicate dance of keeping all of these guys in some sort of almost amoebic mix to keep everybody happy and healthy and performing as well as DiVincenzo did when he was getting 30, 35, 40 minutes and putting 40 on the Pacers in Game 7. Yeah. Stuff like that.
I would think if everyone's healthy, after your starting 5, you've got Nas, Dante, and Na as your 3 guys.
Yeah.
But you brought Ingles in to be a guy that can also kind of handle the ball.
No, there's the Aussie.
Yeah, I mean, Ingles has to be in that rotation. And if Rudy's out, does Garza get minutes? Are they going to go small? That's what's fascinating. So where's that backup center spot? Garza obviously had a really nice game against the Lakers. It's preseason. But, the dude offensively...
He's a fan favorite, too.
He plays the right way, and he's always in the right spot to get that offensive board or to make the right pass. I'm interested to see if he gets some run, if they decide...
Remember him against Joker?
Based, I'm sure.
You remember him?
Yeah. That was a little tricky.
And he did as well as he could, but all the same, it was kind of funny. This move with Cat, though, moving on, is this also kind of you're putting a ton of trust in the long term of Naz Reid. You mentioned him, 6th man of the year, but I thought at times last year Naz actually played better with Rudy, if we're looking at big guy tandems, than even Carl did. But this would be a big, we're saying we're putting a stamp on Naz maybe in the long term.
Yeah, and I think as a fan, as you just said, I kind of like the idea of Naz starting alongside Rudy to be kind of the cat light, if you will. But does Randall come off the bench? And does he want to do that in a year?
Randall's not coming off the bench.
But you got to have minutes where Naz and Rudy are on the court together. This trade was made in part because they want to pay Naz and they could not do that if Cat was still on the team. So the team is going to go as far as we want if Naz and Jaden McDaniels take the step up in responsibility they're going to get offensively with this team. More so even McDaniels, because I think we need to see him develop. We know he's a lockdown defender, but he's going to have looks offensively. Teams are going to dare him to shoot. So I'm really curious to see how much he's improved in that way, because the points are there, and Naz and McDaniels, I think, are the two guys that have a chance to really elevate one more level this season with that opportunity.
If you want Julius Randle to keep giving those awesome audio quotes, loving the food in Minnesota, Randle's got to start. Okay, so if you want to hear those nice things,
he will start.
No, I know he will.
He will start to start the year, but you know what? At some point, if
we can get tricky with things,
it's no guarantee.
Dumb question. Last question is, typically in the NBA, there's so much less parity than there is in other sports. I mean, the NFL, they went through a stretch. I don't know what it is overall, but like 50% of playoff teams in the NFL, there's like an overturn, or turnover, year to year. Not always the case in the NBA. Do we feel like, whether it's the run from last year, what we've seen thus far, and expectations, ball all that together, this is a stable Western Conference contender? You know, and you mentioned we want to see something more from Jaden and how this new rotation and everything. But overall, this is a stable, consistent Western Conference contender in a league that generally the best teams are always going to find their way to the top. Yeah. That this is one of those teams.
100%. And the West is brutally tough because the best teams, OKC, Wolves, Denver, Dallas, they all look as strong as they were last year. But then you add like Memphis gets all their guys back. They were all hurt last year. The Pelicans were banged up. And if Zion can stay healthy, we've been saying that every year, that's a really talented team with 3 All-Stars. Houston and San Antonio are starting to make noise. Sacramento, the Lakers and Golden State are who they are, and the Clippers. I mean, there are very few terrible teams in the West. So the Wolves now have that target on their back. They got to the Western Finals. They're going to be on national TV like 25% of the time. They've got to step up and keep pace, and I think they can. This trade might take a little while to everybody figure out their roles. The start will be interesting. But, yeah, they're an absolute contender. I make OKC the favorite heading in with the changes they adding Caruso and Hartenstein. But right after them, the big question will be who's going to guard Jokic, because Cat did a really nice job. And when they match up with Denver, can they still kind of contain Jokic like they were able to do in the playoffs?
I can't wait. You're the best.
Either.
Thanks for hanging out, man.
Always a pleasure, man.
That is Dave Sinykin, the head cheese, at TC Head Cheese via X, Packer Preview in the Zone Saturday mornings, and of course our resident Packer loving fan. Final segment next. Indeed, the Wild and Blue Jackets at Xcel Energy Center Manana, pumped for the Minnesota Wild to open their season, and just kind of talking through it. Dave Sinykin last segment. Thanks, by the way, to Bridget Carlton of the Lynx for joining, Peter Carline on the Vikings from across the pond, Pat Micheletti getting us ready for hockey season, not only with the Wild, but with the Gophers and that icebreaker tournament in Vegas coming up. And then Cindy last segment talking about the Wolves. There's a lot going on. It's a busy fall, and it's a beautiful one. And Lynx in the WNBA Finals. And both the hoops and the hockey teams starting their season will be live 9 to noon at TRIA. They're going to be doing the morning skate tomorrow at TRIA. So we're going to chat with John Hines out of the gate. I think Kevin Gore is going to join during the first hour. Michael Russo of The Athletic in the middle stretch. Billy G, Bill Guerin, Wild GM, expected to join at some point. And then Alex Stalock, former goaltender, Duluth Bulldog, go crazy. He'll be in the mix during the final hour. But you mentioned Russo. Some sort of 5-year plan in the mix. Did you say that?
Yeah, so him and Joe Smith just put out an article literally 5-10 minutes ago with Leopold, an exclusive interview. Leopold, there's some Bill Guerin quotes about a 5-year plan and the mystical. And a quote quickly before we go, exclusively, I told you the 5-year plan is not a straight line, but Kaprizov is the most important piece of our 5-year plan. I think I can say that. He goes into more detail to year 2 of the 5-year plan. So we'll see what happens, but they've got some sort of idea of where they want to go.
Hold on. Are we in year 2 or did we just complete year 2?
This is year 2.
This is year 2.
The way that I'm reading it, this is year 2.
Track of it. I mean, it's PJ in year 0. This is year 2. It's a 5-year plan. It sounds like this is hockey's version of trust the process. But we shall see. And we're going to ask Russo about that tomorrow. And hockey heavy, final couple of days. PA back with me tomorrow, running the ship. And then Russo hosts a Friday forechecking feast to look back at the season opener for the Wild. Thank you, Brett, for hanging out.
Of course.
Great job as always. The program is next. Enjoy your afternoon. Thank you, as always, for listening to The Fan.